because it's not good enough to know the theory that, oh, you can kick. He has to train me. So when he backs off, okay, I say, what range is this? This is the range where we would, again, go into the low side kick, renew the trapping. If he moved off minimally, okay, bam, stomp, dumb tech, knee, sat sal, okay, or not sal, just knee sat. Okay, then, again, so I go in and he backs off, decide to go to here. So you have to judge it as the distance is opening up, as it is occurring. In other words, for training initially, you can say, okay, he backs off, and I say, okay, well, let's see, I think it's cross stomp, okay? But after a while, you want to estimate, as he backs off, bam, what is the range? Again, he backs off, bam, bam, coming right back into what you would do standing there. Again, he's here, whoop, bam, and again, it's whoop, so I decide to go, whoop, bam. So coming back into the stomp because I misestimated, fine, go to the next situation. Again, okay, whoop, bam, okay, or again, it's whoop, bam, stomp, and again, whoop, bam, rear round. And again, from the rear round, if I rear round him, at that point, I can throw the cross, coming back into that lead, because when it's the rear round, I'm in right lead, but I throw the rear round, my right is now my cross. I step out the outside, we have this coming back in. It could be that when he backs off and I rear round, bang, that I retract back into this. So you're going to retract, you can step forward, and notice that when he backs off, okay, and I rear round, that if I do go with the right hand, I will tend to go with that hand to be at a safety factor. So there's a couple of things about just if he's a runner. In other words, sees this stuff coming and goes. Now, what about some of the specifics versus a boxer? Because this kind of thing is not what most boxers do. You can still trap up a boxer, although it takes more blending and finesse, because boxers are something to be respected. Not that a martial artist isn't, depending upon who's doing the martial art. Okay, but some of the things of versus a boxer is that, okay, let's say he's in his left lead, let's say. Okay, but one of the things is that when he punches, okay, that I can trap and I'll jam this. If he's got this on his cheek, like a lot of boxers, I'll jam that, okay, and then cut, okay? Or that when he punches, I'll jam it and throw it, push it off to the side and go. Or if I throw a hook and he covers like a boxer, a standard issue boxer does, that if I hook, bam, that you keep this here and then come back in here, okay? Or if I throw my rear hook and he covers, bam. Now, when he throws his other hook, bam, he's had a hard time because you're jamming this. Or, for that matter, that when he hooks, okay, rather, excuse me, that when I hook, that bang, that I'll just trap this and elbow that. If he shoulder rolls, okay, or if at the moment maybe I kicked and I was in match lead and he shoulder rolls, bang, now you leave this hand there and hit. Because it's a standard issue thing, when he shoulder rolls, bang, that's when he can come back with his own hit, and a boxer's going to go here, he's going to slip, he's going to hook. But if I came in here and I kicked and I came down, he shoulder rolls, bang, leave this here, and now trap, knee, stomp. Again, a lot of boxers will use these forearm parries or elbow blocks to defend against the midline. So when he blocks, if I drive this to his midsection and he blocks with the left hand across, again, you can still ball and socket essentially. I drive, wipe off to the side, come back up. If I fake high and low cross and he goes with the right forearm, bang, again, back up to here. Again, get his attention, you go there, back up to here. Or if you fake here and then he drops his right in, bang, here, again, bam. So just because he's a boxer doesn't mean you can't apply your technique to this person. Again, it's adapting. That's Let's talk for a moment in final closing remarks about some of the junfan, which is the raw material, then some of the progressions. Jeet Kune Do, which is such a controversial thing these days. And we could go on for a long time about it, but what I do want to say is one of the primary concepts is fitting in, and that's why there was boxing and trapping and grappling and long range and close range, different experiences. You have to be able to speak those different physical languages. In other words, some people say, well, in our system we combine boxing and wrestling and judo, but it's still formalized. We have this technique with these pieces and it's put together in a formalized way, as opposed to what hopefully, the person that has studied Jeet Kune Do can do is he can move as a boxer for however long and whatever time that is appropriate. He can move as a Wing Chun person. He can move and look like a grappler. He can do what looks like savate, Thai boxing, jiu-jitsu, grappling, and will make the transitions as the needs of the structure are felt. One of the things that I will say, to add my 2 cents to the controversy, is there is talk about Jeet Kune Do as opposed to Jeet Kune Do concepts. And Dan Inosanto uses the term a lot of times, Jeet Kune Do concepts. And then there are those that say that, well, that's not pure. It's not Jeet Kune Do. These people don't get it. What Jeet Kune Do concepts means is that the base of the structure is that Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do training, but where there are other routes that are relevant and other techniques from other systems that fit in to the structure via timing, distance, position, that we do that, and that is still fitting in appropriately. That is Jeet Kune Do concept without violating the concepts of Jeet Kune Do. Bruce Lee was constantly changing and growing. There was a core of things that he used. He was always, the Pak Sao. He never threw out the Pak Sao. But there was the Jeet Kune Do that he did from 64, 67, 70 to 73. There were things that were changing. Anybody that thinks that he wouldn't have been changing over the last 20 years has got to be joking. So I would just like to say that I really appreciate the training that has come down through the family of people, and Dan Inosanto, who's been so constantly generous and somebody who is not afraid to change. And I would hope that people that are watching these tapes would give credit where credit is due to either if they're using this stuff, fine, we're all sharing. But give credit where credit is due to Dan, to the system, people that are going to the seminars, and just try and be general, good people, honest people. Research. Hopefully this tape will have aided your search for what you find usable in the martial arts. And thank you for being with me.
We're going to go into a little review now of some of the primary traps and trapping combinations seen on the previous tapes, which I think will help to go over this information. Starting with jab to attached Pak Sao Da, or slap hand and hit. This time it's Lop Sao or Lop Sao Da. Da just means hit. Grab hand and hit. We have from the high line, Jiao Sao, or running hand to the inside, sometimes known as Pak Jiao. This time we Jiao to the low line. It's Jiao Sao to the low, or Jiao Ha Jiao. Now this time we have a matched ball and socket, or Gua Choi, also known as Pak Sao Gua Choi. This time it's Lop Sao Gua Choi because it's a mismatched ball and socket. When the hand comes underneath the wipe, we refer to that Gua Choi variation as hinge. This time we're simply cutting over his crossing barrier, also known as biu. This time we're going to ping choi, or chop choi, from the high line and rolling under. In this case, we're meeting that obstruction, and we're doing a jut sao, or jerk hand. This time we met that same obstruction, but we're going hyun sao, or circling hand, specifically circling to the inside line. This time we're hitting ping choi, gua choi, going to the high line, rolling back fist to the high line. In this case, we're going from the low line, jiaowing or disengaging to the high line. Now double trap, Pak Sao, Lop Sao, Gua Choi, to Gum Sao with the hit. In this case, I pak sao, and then I try and poke over the barrier. In this case, I pak sao, and this time I cup sao, or I turn the body away with that hand before I hit. Pak sao, and this time I go into the low hewn sao to the outside and palming low to the ribs. Gua choi and lop sao gua choi over the rear hand. Again, gua choi. And to pak sao on the rear hand, following up with a second hit. Gua choi, this time going to the cup sao. Gua choi or pak sao gua choi, because there's the slap hand. It's always said, sometimes we abbreviate it. And this time going with the hewn sao to the low line. Here we're coming up from the low line, gua choi, and then gua choi over the rear barrier. So it's a matched gua choi at the low line to a mismatched gua choi at the high line. Again, going from that position, that low position, is chop choi or gua or ping choi. This time we jiaoed from the high line to the midline, and then we gua choi over the rear barrier, keeping it pulled towards the chest so it's tucked nice and tight away from our face. It's actually against the chest. And then we cup down again and hit one more time. Again, jiaoing to the midline there. And at this point, I go right into the cup sao, or cup sao da. Again, da just means hit, and then I pak da just to follow it up. Lop sao. When I get that cross energy, I pak sao gua choi, going over that barrier. Again, going from the lop sao. In this case, I just pull the hand back just towards me rather than rolling it, gua choi style, because it depends on, again, as we said in the tape, where he blocks on the wrist. This time, after the lop, I hewn sao, following it with a lop sao da. This time after the lop sao, it's the hewn sao, and I pak sao da, or slap hand with hit, or as a hack in this case, fox sao. This time I came under the barrier because they felt like I had the room after the lop sao, so it's a small disengagement to lop sao. This time I start with the hewn sao, and then to the gua choi. Hewn sao, and back to the mismatched ball and socket against that particular kind of energy. Here I get a lop sao resisted, so I pak sao. In this case, the lop is resisted and pulled to the outside, so I let it go and go to the inside line. In this case, I'm simply trying to cut over his barrier, but I don't make it, so I jut sao da. Okay. Double pak sao, poking the first barrier, slap or loi pak on the second barrier. This time it's pak with chung choi, or middle hit before the second pak sao. This time I pak sao and I tan sao da before the second pak sao. Ball and socket to inside pak sao. In this case, it's the ping choi to the rear pak sao. Here we have pak sao, chung choi, and then gua choi over the rear hand. In this case, we ball and socket first before we go to that chung choi to the low midline, and then trapping back over the top. Here we have lop sao da. And jutting that hand. Again, jutting and coming over, and then trapping pak sao over the top. Here we have lop sao. And then when you get that barrier, lop sao again, double lop sao technique. And can go as long as it needs to, which would be actually done with a lot of forward pressure. Again, starting with the lop sao. But since he blocked it out, you just let it go. You hinge and come right up the center, regain your inside lop sao to a hit. Pak sao. And pocking, but coming over the top of that when he came up from the inside. That's the series. This time we hewn sao instead of that pak sao when being blocked on the inside with that rear hand. Again, just showing some of the variations of follow-up there. Again, here we go, double jet. Again, mismatched ball and socket to the lop sao on the other hand, on the second barrier. Mismatched ball and socket. And then since he blocked out, again, just hinged, let it go, come up the inside. Come back in with pak da. This time I jiao, and after that rear barrier, I jiao back down low. This time I jiao high, before going into hewn sao with a trap below the hit hand. This time, I jut sao from that position instead of hewn sao. Again, jiaoing from low to high. And then I jut sao with an intermediate hit with the left hand in this case. I'm showing here how you can hook and still ball and socket. Again, when you get that energy against your hook, that you can kind of a jutting hewn and then come back with a pak sao as follow-up. Again, the hook to a hewn sao and hooking on the inside line. And in this case, I'm just pinning the hand down and hitting over the top, or I'm pinning the hand down across as I hit low before I come back up high with pak sao gua choi. In this case, with the lop sao again, but he punched, so I inside wong pak and follow up. So we're defending our trapping now in this series. I lop sao, and I inside pak sao against his punch. Again, he's punching instead of trying to obstruct now. This time I split, according to the position. This is defending against the counter puncher in the middle of our trapping in this series, showing a little bit of follow-up. Again, lop sao, and then pak sao gua choi over his cross, his attempt at a cross. Again, then just showing how it can follow up with hand combination. This time from the lop sao, I cup sao with the hitting hand, or cup sao da, because I'm hitting back. pak sao da, follow up. Again, after the lop, when he tries to cross, I just cut this time. Could follow up with a straight blast as a potential thing. We have pak sao, but that punch comes, so we pak sao again. Again, not pak saoing obstruction, but pak saoing the attempt at a cross. Pak sao, tan sao da. Slap hand, and then loi wong pak, or inside wong pak, parrying hit. This time I have to bong sao after the pak to stop it because it came in tight. And I just roll that bong sao into gua choi, lop sao gua choi. Is ball and socket, and then going into block and hit. Ball and socket, inside wong pak. Coming back into hacking and hitting. Ball and socket, crashing that line into the cross, and then lop sao. Mismatched ball and socket, or gua choi. And when he fires that cross, go ahead and crash the barrier, and lop sao. Again, ball and socket. This time it came wide, and so I just block and hit. Mismatched ball and socket to a cut. Again, that ball and socket and pak sao gua choi over the arm. This time I'm ball and socket to the inside, and then inside pak sao if that hand was coming at me, if he's trying to cross. This time I cup sao instead, going to the outside of it. And then again, always that follow-up pak sao whenever you pak sao da when you can. Again, ball and socket to the inside, but he's coming wide, so again, just a bar arm. This time I jiao, but when that punch is coming, we just go right into the split. Jiao again, and we pak sao over the outside. Jiao sao and outside wong pak. When that cross comes, got to be always ready for that hit in the middle of your trapping. That's what this is all about. This time just cutting, if I saw it early enough. The jiao sao, and coming over it, just sticking with it to the hewn sao back to the inside, or circling hand. This time I just crossed the barrier, and I cut, but then that cross came, so I pak sao on the inside. I try and cut over his barrier. If that cross comes, that's when we just take it to the inside wong pak, or inside parry and hit. Again, I try and cut, but that cross comes, but it comes wide, so it's the block and hit. Sometimes just referring to it as corner. And following up. Again, cutting, the cross comes, hewn sao out to the side, or cup sao, depends on how much you're just circling and how much you're turning the body, whether we would call it cup sao or hewn sao. And we just hewn it back down, and then we slapping back down low, coming up high. Ping choi gua choi, but the cross comes, and again, block and hit. Tan sao in this case. Trapping low, coming back up high, but it came barreling down tight, so I had to bong sao, or wing hand. In this case, I punch, I get that barrier, I jut sao, but the punch is coming, so I go back into a tan sao da. This time I jut, and I go to the bong sao, because it was cutting tight. Bong sao gua choi. Now we're going into a little bit of the counter trapping. He tries to ball and socket, and I jiao sao. He tries to ball and socket, and I pak sao gua choi over his. He tries to gua choi, I crash the barrier, and lop sao. Against his ball and socket, I just cut. Against the mismatched ball and socket, Gen lap sao gua choi. In this case, after his attempt, if I was holding on, and you can trap it down onto his own hand and come back. This time I felt that he wasn't holding on, so I can counter back low. This time after the pak sao, I jiao sao. This time I cut. This time I pak sao back over his pak sao. This time I'm just showing how you can back off and kick. This time I'm cutting to the inside line. This time I'm tan saoing and hitting up the inside line. Against his lop, I bong sao and gua choi back over. Against his lop, if he's holding on, again, just trap it back over and hit. In this case, I felt it early enough to tan sao and hit, pulling him off balance. This time I just slap and hit. He's going to the inside line now, but I just ball and socket and go over his outside line. When he tries to gua choi to the inside line, I can also just cut. Or jiao low. In this case, he's trying to cut over my punch, so I can bong sao. Or he tries to cut over my punch, and I can tan sao and hit on the inside line. Or I can just roll it over the outside. This time he tries to jiao, and I tan against his jiao. And hitting low, I just trap it down and hit on the high line. He tries to pak sao, double pak sao, and I bong sao off to the side. Also against that double pak sao, I can parry and step off to the outside line of the other hand. Well, that concludes the little review and indeed the whole series of tapes. Hope that you've enjoyed it. Again, all this material comes from the tradition from Bruce Lee through Dan Inosanto, Junfan Jeet Kune Do tradition. And while some of the drills are not exactly the way they were done in Chinatown, it's as in the tradition. We're not afraid to change and grow as we see that that helps ourselves and our students. And hope that is giving you a good look into trapping hands of this lineage, and good luck in your training.